to speak in defence of flavours, especially amendments 144 and 146. 21% of adults have quit smoking over the last 5 years, of which nearly half have used vapes as part of that successful quit journey. And, my lords, I am one of those people. I started with single-use vapes, but they got banned. So now I use the replacement, which are used very much as single-use vapes. And they've been crucial to huge numbers, millions of adults who have done the same. And their attractions are ease of use, their convenience, their prevalence in a wide range of retail outlets, and yes, flavours, which made the distinction from smoking clear for me. And as the Noble Earl Russell has explained, that becomes important. And I was able to switch to suit my taste. And I was trying to leave away the taste of tobacco. That was the point. Somehow the issue of flavours has become entangled with the notion that flavours are just a cynical ploy to hook the young into vaping. To be honest, I think that that's a sort of conspiratorial take that isn't that helpful, and it misses out on a crucial notion. It's assumed that adults don't like sweet things. Now, as somebody who eats a lot of jelly tots, never mind anything else, I disagree. But we know that there's a huge market, and I mentioned this in second reading, of flavoured gins. In fact, last year at Christmas, the Lords were selling little tins of sweet flavoured gins. Went down a treat as Christmas presents for adults. I didn't buy them for 10-year-olds, and all the adults like them because of those sweet flavours. So I think we need to get rid of the myth that because there's flavours, they're aimed at children. I just do not believe that's true. I think it's wrong to assume, that, as I say, that they were developed to make the products attractive to people under 18. In reality, these features became popular, flavoured vapes, by the way, during a time when adult vaping was rapidly growing and there was no measurable youth uptake. So, interestingly, they were popular with adults. Young people were not flocking to buy. There's other explanations. And given the relatively high use of dual use currently, I think that there is potentially, if we do this wrong, we will end up stagnating those vaping and not helping with people quitting smoking. And even though, I'm less as concerned about flavour names and descriptors myself. I think that all sorts of products, they might be naff names, and the Noble Lord Moylan explained that, some of them don't seem to fit the description. But, I don't know, if you buy perfumes, if you buy any kind of women's products, they've got daft-sounding names, often quite childish names. And I just think but that doesn't mean they're aimed at children. That's the point I'm making. So I think we can be over-cynical. I do think that flavours have been developed to allow market competition through product and specific brand differentiation. That is a legitimate business aim. That's a perfectly reasonable thing to do. I think different tastes matter. I hate many of the flavours. I have my favourites. Banana ice, if anyone's interested. But that's the same of a range of products that I purchase and consume, and it's part of what makes vaping attractive to us ex-smokers. So reducing choice, I think, in terms of what's acceptable, and only making, the way that the wording is that there'll be some central diktat on state-endorsed flavours, which does not appeal to me, let me tell you. It might lead to a rather bland, limited options, and I think it could backfire. I just want to point out that this is a widespread view from people who are not, as it were, people who would share my outlook about this bill in general. The Noble Earl Russell has made his point about all of the things that he supports, which I think are frankly draconian, but we agree on this bit. But also, Ash, who I don't normally agree with, has found that fruit flavours are by far the most popular choice of vape flavours, and the government's own impact assessment found that restricting flavours could mean that 80% of adults who vape could be affected, and that could mean they go on to go back to smoking cigarettes. That's one reason why I'm worried about the present way that the legislation is being posed. I think also there's a failure to take on board evidence here. I appreciate that powers are subject to consultation ahead of secondary legislation, the way the wording of the bill is, but I'm anxious that delegated powers don't guarantee that consultation will be conducted with appropriate parties who understand and are cognizant of the importance of flavours in offering adult smokers an alternative, a more attractive and less harmful replacement, which is what I think is going on. I just wanted to cite a couple of academics here. Dr. Jasmine Kaija, an academic at the University of Bristol, led a study published in the journal Harm Reduction in 2020 and said while flavour restrictions might reduce youth vaping, and emphasise on might, our interview responses suggest they could also discourage adults from using e-cigarettes to help them quit smoking, potentially leading those who vape to return to smoking and leading more people who currently smoke to continue smoking. It then goes on to say that policymakers need to consider the various impacts of the UK government if the UK government decides to ban or over-regulate flavours in vapes. And there's evidence from all around the world on this. A survey in Canada has shown that 36% of vapers have returned to smoking cigarettes because of the Quebec vape flavour ban brought in 2023. And the experience of Australia's restrictions that has limited vape flavours brought up in early 2024 seems important because that regulation proved ineffective at curbing youth vaping. Roughly 30% of 12 to 17-year-olds have tried vaping despite the restrictions on flavours. Meanwhile, smoking rates amongst 14 to 17-year-olds have increased. So I'm just making the point that it's not necessarily a cause here, the vaping, the flavours and vapes, while adult vaping has stagnated. And so guess what? The restrictions that have contributed and have also contributed to a steep rise in illicit vape trade, a kind of vape Wild West. So please, if I could just appeal to the Minister, flavours are not your problem. They are not what make young people vape. There's all sorts of things going on that you should not regulate unless you end up with some unintended consequences, which I know is not what the Minister would want to see happen.